All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Joanna Troutman, and today we are going to make homemade cat food, but with salmon. Right here in this little dish, I have a little dab of my most recent batch of this scrumptious, if you're a cat, salmon food, and we're going to make it. This has to be the fastest cat food recipe I've made to date. It is not the least expensive, but that's to be expected with salmon. However, to prepare it, you can have it ready in less than 30 minutes. So that's definitely a bonus. So I am starting with 1 pound of salmon fillets. I bought these frozen in the grocery store. If you have access to fresh salmon, by all means, you can get that. I have a poaching pan because we are going to poach the salmon and use our cooking liquid. That's important, kind of like with the chicken. As we get started and I explain the ingredients, I'm going to go ahead and turn the burner on and start warming up my water. Because with poaching, it's a fairly quick cooking method, especially with fish. I didn't want to add any extra oil, especially because the cats really don't care. My goal is to get the salmon cooked through and also to have some liquid to add to my other ingredients. Now, we are going to add all of our ingredients to the blender pitcher while the fish poaches, but I'm going to explain what we're putting in. A lot of the other ingredients are similar to the chicken and turkey cat food recipes, but I'll go over them. We have a little bit of frozen vegetables. This is a carrot, pea, corn, and green bean mix. There's several different vegetables that are safe for cats. This happens to be a mix that my cats enjoy. I have ground flaxseed, which it does have fiber in it, which it is good for them, a little bit of it. Healthy fats as well as proteins in the ground flaxseed. Be very careful to only use ground flaxseed. The whole flaxseed, they can't do anything with it. In fact, humans, we really can't do much with the whole flaxseed either. We need it ground so we can get to the nutrients. This yellow powder, if you're not familiar with, is nutritional yeast. It is a similar organism when it's in its living form to the yeast that you would use to bake bread, but this has been toasted and flaked and it is considered nutritional yeast. It's very, very good. It has a buttery flavor. My cats love it. If they get into the kitchen when I'm baking or cooking and I have nutritional yeast out, or if any gets sprinkled on the floor, they are very quick to clean it up. They really like the flavor. In this particular recipe, when we're using 1 pound of salmon, I add 2 eggs, and yes, I am adding the shells and all because we're using a high power blender to basically create a pate. This is a pate style cat food. I have my trusty pumpkin because I do believe that this adds a little bit of a soluble fiber, which will help keep their stools soft, as well as some other vitamins and minerals that are great for them. This tiny amount is a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric and just a dash of black pepper. And when I say dash, I mean literally a dash. It does not take much. You add the black pepper because it allows the cat's body to actually use the curcumin and all the other flavonoids that are in the turmeric. If you don't add the black pepper, the liver and the body's filtration system, the cat's body's filtration system, it basically gets rid of the turmeric before it can help you. The black pepper slows down the excretory system and the liver and allows the body to actually get the benefit from the turmeric, which is mostly anti-inflammatory. All right, this white powder is 2 grams of a taurine supplement. Just to be sure that the cats are getting enough taurine, I am supplementing with 2 grams of taurine. Salmon should have taurine in it as a fish. It is expected to have it. But to be on the safe side, I supplemented with 2 grams, which adds roughly a little bit over, I don't know, it more than supplements the daily allowance, putting it over a little bit over 200 milligrams per day. which is above the recommended minimum, and also excess taurine is flushed through the urinary tract. So it should be fine for them to have a little bit extra. All right, my water is almost at a simmer, so I'm going to grab some scissors out. Again, if you're using salmon that is, that you bought from the fish counter, so it's in a different wrapping, obviously you're not going to be cutting open packets of the frozen packed salmon. But where I am at, this was the most expedient way to get a hold of a pound of salmon. And again, these 3 fillets, if you do it by weight, add up to 1 pound's worth. Now, if you've never poached before, it's not boiling. What you're doing is you are cooking, in this case, your salmon on top of simmering water. It is not a super long cooking process. Now that I have just the beginnings of a simmer going, I'm going to gently, and I'm adding the liquid too, add my salmon without splashing myself into my pan. And this is not a poaching pan. I really don't poach enough to have a dedicated pan for it. This is just a large frying pan or saute pan. Use what you have. Take a look at your frying pans and try and pick one that's big enough that you can have all of your fillets so they have space for water to be around them. I'm going to put the lid back on and set a timer for, I'm going to set it for 4 minutes. Yeah, sorry, I'm fighting with my timer here. Okay, 4 minutes. That should be more than adequate time to get everything in. Now, when you're adding ingredients to a blender, you want to do your frozen items first. In this case, my vegetables are still slightly frozen. They are going in first. Using my trusty spatula. And again, this is for extra, vegetables are good for us. They're also good for cats in limited quantities, not tons. Next, I'm going to put my 2 eggs in, and yes, I'm putting them in whole. If you're concerned about your blender not being able to get the pieces of shell small enough, go ahead and just add the egg or the egg white and the egg yolk, and you can bake your shells and then grind them up in a coffee grinder and add it in later. It's just a little bit more time consuming. With the higher powered blender, I can do this and my cats are fine. So that will be up to you. In this recipe, I chose not to add rice. My cats like rice in their cat food, but this one is a grain-free recipe, and that's what we're going with. So next, I'm going to add my pumpkin. Actually, no. I'm gonna do my ground flaxseed, then my nutritional yeast, and again, that was a 1/2 cup of ground flaxseed, a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric along with a dash of pepper and 2 grams of taurine. Now, here is my 4 ounces of pumpkin. And I think I just flicked pumpkin in my face. All right, my timer, I'm at the 2-minute mark. I'm gonna turn my burner down. If you see, we are close to being cooked. I'm actually at the 1-minute mark in about 40 seconds. I am going to go ahead, actually I'm gonna check. Finding a thick part of my salmon. Let's see if I can get it. Nope. We'll do it, let it go another 30 seconds. Because all we are waiting for before we blend all of this up is the salmon and then the cooking liquid. This blender is fine for doing with hot liquids. You should make sure that your blender is. If it is not, you're gonna have to wait for everything to cool down. In this case, I do not have to wait much. All right, I have passed the 3-minute mark. This fish is cooked. I can flake it with my spoon. I'm going to go ahead and turn the burner off. And at this point, because I've turned off my gas, I can turn the fan off and it's easier to hear. I have a slotted spoon handy so that I can easily get the salmon pieces in. Doesn't matter too much though, because we're gonna be adding all of this liquid. I've had several questions about why do you add so much liquid in your recipes, and that is because one of the biggest things about having wet cat food, whether it's homemade or store-bought, is that it helps your cats stay hydrated better. Cats by species they're a descendant of a desert animal, and it makes them, apparently from what I've read and from what I've seen with my cats, they don't necessarily always drink enough water on their own. Typically they drink, by the time they're going to go drink water from, say, the water bowl, they're already partially dehydrated. And in fact, most of your most common health problems with your cats can be, if not necessarily fixed, they can absolutely be, their condition and their lifestyle can be improved with better hydration. So wet cat food is one of the fastest ways to improve your cat's hydration. And this is a super heavy pan, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna guess most of y'all's pans that you would use for poaching or sauteing are not quite as heavy as this big stainless steel one, but it is a wonderful pan. All right, I have my pitcher, and I know by human standards, this is not the most appetizing food. However, if your cat is a salmon lover, this will absolutely make their day. So, I'm going to go ahead and put my lid on my blender before I start adding any power. I use the tamper. It depends on what your blender, the way it works. Not all blenders have a tamper. All right, plugging it in, powering it on. I start with a low power and work my way up. And I'm going to end up using a fairly high speed because of those eggshells. The faster the speed of your blender, the smaller the pieces of food go. So here we go. And we have essentially very rapidly cooked those eggs too, because they were in there with the simmering hot water or the boiling hot water, as well as the very hot salmon. Now at this point, I would not serve it to the cats quite yet. It's a little bit hot, but you can. I'm going to store this in the fridge. I'm not going to pressure can this recipe because this amount, if you go by calories, is enough for 7 days of food for an adult cat. An adult cat should get roughly 200 to 250 calories a day of food, and this recipe is adequate for that. In my household, I have 13, well, actually now we have 14 cats, and we use this in combination with dry food, but this will not get me a week of food, but it will absolutely get a little bit of food. It'll be the wet food portion for a couple of days, for a day or two for my crew. So what I'm gonna do is store it in the fridge, and with something as strong smelling as salmon, I prefer to store it in glass, because if you store it in plastic, that plastic item is going to smell like salmon for months to come, because plastic by molecular nature is porous, whereas glass is not nearly as porous. So it does not take on the smell of what you put in it. And I'm not worried about headspace because again, I'm not canning these. I'm gonna put them straight into the fridge for storage. And it looks like I'm gonna have to go get another jar before I'm finished putting this away. Now, this looks extremely liquid right now. Let me pull out a jar of what I made earlier today and have been cooling. So if we want to compare, see, this is very liquid, but as it cools, the protein and the fat and the salmon and the eggs and the flax, they start to congeal essentially and return to solid form. So it does become less soup, more pate. Hence this somewhat holding its shape. Now, if I'm serving this over dry food, which tomorrow morning I probably will, I'm going to actually add even more water to it because it makes like a gravy over the dry food. But that's what I do. That's completely up to you. If you're using something like the Sheba Perfect Portion Salmon cat food, you're gonna want to basically say, okay, in this amount that I have 7 days worth. If I normally give my cat 3 of the little Sheba Perfect Portions per day, then you would basically say, I have 21 little Sheba things. But that's the way you have to approach this. But again, this is salmon cat food. And again, please store it in the refrigerator. This is worth 7 days of food for an adult cat, and I made it from 1 pound of salmon as well as 2 eggs and a few other ingredients. If you have any questions, I do read the comments, and please do not forget to subscribe.